So for today's video, I wanted to talk about the subject of whether powerlifting has peaked or if we're past the golden era, so to speak. And what kind of stemmed this idea is the animal cage is coming back in about a month, not even in like 2, 3 weeks. So at the Arnold Sports Festival, it's always every weekend, the first weekend in March in Columbus, Ohio, downtown Columbus. I've gone to it like 5 times in the past when I was an animal athlete, and the animal cage was always the pinnacle of the Arnold in a sense. Well, I guess you could say honestly the strongman competition was much bigger, as was the bodybuilding competition. But among the expo, so among the actual things you could do in the expo, meet and greets and that sort of stuff, the cage was the pinnacle event. It didn't hold a candle necessarily to the strongman competition and bodybuilding competition, but among the expo things, it was the fun thing to see, the cool thing to see. And it went away for a couple of years because of COVID and the shutdowns and all that. But they're bringing it back. There's John Hack lifting on Friday, Dan Green lifting on either Friday or Saturday. Some big names. And it just got me to thinking, like, with how much powerlifting has changed over the years, I think a lot of people make the argument that it's just not the same. It's not as pure as it once was. And I think this is, as someone who was a part of that kind of golden era, so to speak, from that, 2005 to 2015 decade. That's what I would say was the time frame where things were just different. I feel like I'm somewhat, I can speak on this. I have the credentials as far as being a part of that. And there has been a major evolution of sorts, and I think that's natural. I think that's a natural progression with how popular and widespread social media has become. Because right at that point, I think it was like 2014, Instagram just started to become a thing. It wasn't really a thing before that. YouTube wasn't really a thing. I mean, you could find lifting videos, but it wasn't anywhere near saturated as it was now. Guys would post up a lifting video and it'd just be a clip. There was no vlog. There was no breakdown. It was just literally clips of, people doing different lifts. And in that sense, it was definitely more pure because you didn't have the saturation from a social media standpoint, where it's definitely true that a lot of people, no matter what the endeavor, and particularly in the sport of powerlifting and bodybuilding, they're more doing it in a lot of ways to get famous, so to speak, and to get an audience, as opposed to actually loving it to a pure standpoint, because there just weren't the eyeballs on us at that point in time back in the day. Like, nobody ever expected tons of views. As far as, like, in my case, lifting in my basement or lifting with the Lily Bridges, we more posted our stuff up, but we weren't expecting a million views and to blow up into a social media sensation, because it just wasn't a thing. Most of us were kind of peaking around that time of, like, before social media was a thing. So that's definitely changed the ball game, where you're getting a huge amount of people into the sport who maybe are doing it just to get that fame and attention and such, and we're seeing more of that. And back then it was just, it was a much more aggressive mindset. Everybody lifted more aggressively. It was almost that West Side style that came out even among the raw lifters. Like, it was expected that when you were hitting a squat, bench, or deadlift session, you got as intense as possible. You got really into the lift. You got psyched up. It was loud music. It was slamming weights. It was grimy gyms. That's how it was. It was this underground mindset and this chip on our shoulder mindset where there were a lot higher. I honestly think, I really do think this, there were a lot higher dosages among the steroid side of things. There was just a more of a reckless abandon. And in that regard, the shift now to how things are is somewhat good, because these guys it's a more sustainable approach that appeals to more people. You don't have the grimy gyms, you don't have the mass monsters, juice to the gills. And there's still some of that out there, but it's less of a thing. There's a huge drug tested side of powerlifting. There's a quieter side. There's people lifting in a calm manner, and like that appeals to a broader audience, and that is good to introduce more people to the sport. But I do think the purity of, like, that decade is more or less gone. I mean, there's still, you see snippets of it among certain lifters or at an event like the Animal Cage, but the nostalgic aspect of those hardcore sessions where it was like Chris Hickson, Eric Lillybridge, Ernie Lillybridge, and me pulling and then at Pro Gym in Aurora, Illinois, and just slamming heavy weights down and trying to outlift each other as far as the bar speed. Those days are more or less gone. And that's just how it is. That's like anything in life. Like the things we often look back with such nostalgia and admiration, it's just a natural progression where they go away and something else comes along. And it's like that with music. It's like that with TV shows you may remember from childhood. And we have to accept it, but it's definitely not the same. And it's like I said, there's good and bad to it. I think there's less drug abuse. I think guys are still taking anabolics and PEDs, but they're doing it, I definitely think, at lower dosages because they've seen you don't need to push to that extent. So people aren't getting burnt out as quick. There's not the degree of burnout that we used to see where lifters would peak for a couple of years and then they were out of the game. It's a more calculated approach where people are in the game longer, they're progressing longer, and that sort of thing. You don't see guys just flame out as quickly. There's still some of that, but it's much more toned down. So that's a positive aspect of it. But I do think to a degree, that era when the internet was new was just different. It was a different mindset, a different intensity, not a sustainable approach. Even for me, I mean, you look at my physique and I've completely transformed my life and my approach and all these sorts of things. And I still love powerlifting. I'm going to do another meet. I'm going to do more meets, obviously. I still coach a ton of guys. And it's just, I love powerlifting. It's the strength pursuit is the first and foremost love of mine. And I want to educate and help as many people as I can as far as how to get better at that, whether it's with coaching or this sort of content and that's, all this sort of stuff. But just like with anything, it's like as I've gotten older, I'm 32 years old now. I'll be 33 in August. I have to take a different approach than when I was 22. So the reckless abandon has to somewhat go away, and I have to do things in a way where I prioritize my health more, and I'm around longer to teach others and spread the word and all that. So powerlifting's kind of done the same thing. It was a very unhealthy sort of endeavor to where it's become obviously healthier to an extent. There's obviously definitely a dark, underground, unhealthier side, but I'd say overall it's more appealing to the masses, and we're seeing all age demographics and people from all over getting into it. So, this video is just kind of looking back on things and like how it's all changed, how the sport's evolved. And my view on it, I do miss some of the intensity and those days, but I also think, like I said, as far as a health standpoint and being more applicable to more people, this is not a bad thing necessarily the way it's gone. Now, I'd be interested to hear y'all's thoughts on this. So comment in the description, like, what do you guys think was the golden age of powerlifting? Who were some of those guys? Is that the time we're in now? Do you like the way powerlifting has evolved? Or do you think you'd like to be more underground and more intense and on a smaller scale and be more of a niche thing? Because I kind of go back and forth with it. But it is fun now to have to live almost vicariously through clients, see them compete and do well, see people from my gym compete and do well, and I can do that without having to kill myself necessarily trying to achieve 900,000 pound deadlifts and all that. So I still lift heavy. I love it. Never gonna stop. Love lifting heavy, guys. It's just, there's nothing like hitting PRs and getting stronger. But just like with yourself, as you become a different person, as you age and develop a healthier mindset, I think the sport's kind of gone that way too. Now, last thing, check out Barbell Apparel, my sponsor, guys. They're freaking awesome. Love them. Love all the stuff. They have the $99 pants sale, a third off right now. They'll replace anytime they get torn or anything like that. They'll replace them. Check that out. Link in the description. Really appreciate you guys helping out. Check out my collab shirt I did with them. Thanks for watching the videos, subscribing, and all the things, guys. Appreciate you all.